An atheist in a response said, "Well, what about your Allah? An evil God that allows women to be raped and he watches and does nothing. What about Muslims being killed in Palestine and tortured at Abu Ghraib prison? Where is your Allah? How come we never see babies being saved? We just see Allah killing. What is the point of Allah bringing babies to the earth and once it's born it dies? And babies born to illnesses and cancers, etc." I say in a response, thank goodness in Islam we believe in Judgment Day, unlike atheists. So if a rapist rapes a woman, he will be judged, trialed and put in hell. As for atheism, if the rapist never gets caught, hence no Judgment Day. So in atheism there is no justice. And you make it sound like Allah watches and he does nothing. That is ludicrous. Every bad deed is recorded by the angels, and Allah Almighty will deal with the evildoers. As for Muslims being tortured in prisons and bombed in Palestine, Allah will reward those who have been oppressed, tortured and killed in his cause. No injustice will they see, but get the full reward of the hereafter. What is the point in bringing newly born infants to the world and having their life cut short? You see, the atheist mindset is only limited to this world. Had this world been it and no hereafter, it would be a sound argument. However, Allah Almighty is the one who gives life and takes it and tests people with it, as Allah says in the glorious Quran, "I will test you with your wealth and calamity, health and family." Hence, if an infant is born into the world in the state of being dead or death or handicapped, Allah Almighty tests if the parents will be patient with the test and be grateful, or would they rebel against God, as often we see people do, especially when they have lost a loved one. This world is not the end, and there is a bigger plan, a reward, a compensation for those who believe. Hence Allah Almighty will take anyone anytime with any type of death, maybe by heart attack, cancers, diseases, murders and so on. A transition to the next world that has eternal life, no diseases or cancers, pain or suffering, but joy for those who believe. Finally, why doesn't Allah save some babies? There are hundreds of cases where babies at near death have been saved. Just recently, a baby in a pram goes under a passing train and nothing happens. It amazes me how hypocritical atheists can get. When God doesn't save them or give them no health or no wealth, there is no God. But when God does give them health and wealth and a good life, again there is no God. It is very typical of atheists who always conveniently blame God instead of blaming themselves. Most of the bad things you see around you, for instance humans dying from starvation, is a result of human greed. Not sharing or taking care of fellow man because the rich want to get richer and at any given cost, even if that means if other people have to die from starvation. And you don't give a damn because what's more important to you, the more wealth you have and the higher your status becomes. Pretty much an atheist concept of the survival of the fittest. God is so merciful. On the other hand, he gives a solution to end poverty through the means of charity. If every person on the earth gave 2.5% of their wealth, as the Quran commands, there would not be a starving person left on the face of the earth. So why blame God when he gives you the solution and the answer to your problem? Except you choose not to apply it, you disobey God, and then you hypocritically blame God when bad things is a result for being greedy. K.T. Blackadder then quotes to say, in reference to Brother Uthman's point, that God allows people to suffer to appreciate the goodness. K.T. Blackadder sees this nonsense and tries to nonsensically give an example by stating that a person does not have to feel frostbite to appreciate the warmth of the sun. In reality, it is him who is nonsense, No one claims people won't appreciate the sun's warmth without having to face the extreme cold. Of course you will get a sense of comfort and show a form of appreciation towards the sun that makes you warm. What KT Blackadder has trouble understanding is that when people also go through the extreme negative effect, they appreciate what is given to them in the positive more. For example, if you never went through famine, starvation, and always had food available without having to starve, you wouldn't appreciate food as much as you should, and be a wasteful person, as we quite often see in the Western world. Just in Australia, in one whole year, 12,000 tons of good food is thrown to waste because people don't appreciate food as much since they have not gone through starvation. If they went through suffering, they would value and appreciate food more. Hence, you wouldn't get so much food thrown into waste, which is an undisputable fact and logic. Hence, the argument still stands. Then KT Blackadder spoke about responding to morality. His claim against religion is that unlike secular law, the mandate of killing someone cannot be challenged, since in religion it's prescribed by God, regardless if it's a just cause or not just. But in secular law, he argues, killing laws can be changed and challenged. Response. Again, this is another incoherent, nonsensical argument made by the atheist. Why? He is now comparing God to humans who are bound to make mistakes. God, unlike human beings, makes no mistakes. That's why he's God. So if God has commanded a particular law to remain forever for a just cause, then it stays there. There is no need for dispute, since God's law is most just. Even for argument's sake, let's say, for example, God's divine law can be changed by humans, then the atheist will argue and claim, how can an all-knowing true justice God have his law changed by humans? Does that mean we humans know how to legislate rather than an all-knowing God? At minute 11:40, KT Blackadder then went on a contradiction diatribe. He claims that the God of Islam does not define objective morality in regards to killing. Then at the same time, killing is fine depending on the type of circumstances. But that is the same value of secular West society. So I don't see how this is a contradiction in Islam. For instance, in secular law, babies are killed even up until 9 months through abortions. But this killing is perfectly acceptable in secular society. But when it comes to apostasy laws in Islam, this is deemed as evil. Why the double standards? Objective morality regarding apostasy does in fact define apostasy, killing. It may seem as murder by West, but again it's seen as murder by those who are not Muslim and who do not know better than God and deem it as murder. But a Muslim who understands that God knows best and that is a justified killing and not murder cannot be used against God or Islam. Pretty much the atheist is trying to force his own point of view to a all-just God who does things for a good reason, even if you don't want to understand those reasons. You cannot therefore label apostasy as murder. It's basically me trying to label all mothers as murderers for aborting their babies in the wombs. In secular atheist society, I'm sure most of those mothers who will not consider it as murder, rather they will say it is alternative measure. Or another example is treason. In the Western world, those found guilty for treason may very well be prosecuted and put up for capital punishment. If capital punishment is imposed for treason, can I call it murder? I guess I can from an atheist point of view who labels apostasy as murder in Islam. I wish atheists can show some consistency in their arguments for a change. When an ex-Muslim leaves his religion, conspires against Islam, he's caught, then he's put to death. This is murder. But when a person commits treason and conspires against the secular government or imprisoned for life, this is not seen as murder or injustice. Typical atheist double standards. K.T. Blackadder then went on to say, morality does not evolve in religion, rather it evolves in secular society that changes morality to reach the better good, in the end to take man out of the dark ages. Response. It may seem to some atheists to a degree morality may have succeeded to become better, but I would beg to differ strongly. Blackadder, I'm sure you know we live in the 21st century, and I'm afraid that your claim is not true, that morality has evolved in secular society to the better. But is this true? If we look at our modern world, we are a disgrace, and the past is much better than us. Look at us today in the modern world. We have the greatest amount of adultery and fornication. We have the greatest amount of rape. We have the greatest amount of women being abused and beaten by their partners and husbands. We have the greatest amount of alcohol and drug abuse. Suicide at alarming levels. We have licensed brothels with 50,000 prostitutes walking the street. We have men dressed up as women. We have men marrying each other. We have legalized out in the open public sex parks. We have late night television showing people having sex like animals, doing all sorts of sick things. We have mothers killing their own babies by license, abortions. People dropping atomic bombs on each other. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Countries invading other countries to take all their natural resources. Iraq, and bombing thousands of civilians. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Much more bad things could be said about a so-called evolved morally secular society. And this proves that when God's divine laws are substituted for human laws, what we have is a whole circus of laws changing from one day to another. What is okay today might not be okay tomorrow, and what is seen as bad in the past may be okay. Now, so who decides? This is why in religion you have a consistency to make society to the better, but in atheist secular system there is no consistency to reach the goodness, since human laws are ever changing, since everyone has their own personal view of what is better. The final proof that we have become a worse nation is the very fact that all of the criminal activity that I've mentioned above is growing at a rapid pace today. So morally, we're not becoming any better. In this section, Richard Dawkins tried to explain nothingness in regards to that something can indeed come from nothing in regards to the universe, and does not mean it has to be God, since we can get matter from nothingness. This by far is ridiculous assertion. Both Richard Dawkins and K.T. Blackadder is truly blinded by ignorance, and I shall further refute this as Brother Uthman did in his video response to Richard Dawkins. But first wish to address K.T. Blackadder, who in his video response misconstrued Brother Uthman's point that you can in fact give a name to nothingness, as he quotes to say you can name and define the noun and call it nothing. You can also define it with the number 0. You see, Brother Uthman in no way did he mean you can't name nothingness to be 0. He meant it in a matter form. 0 does not have the form of matter because it's non-existence. 0 means none, for your information. Go to the dictionary definition. Nothingness means no thing, not anything, nothing which is contained in. I've heard nothing about, no part, no portion, nothingness remains. One of no consequences, no significance or interest. It has no value, and non-existent, as the dictionary definition puts it. He then went on to say amazingly, after quoting one of the dictionary meanings of the word nothing is actually non-existence. I could not believe my ears to hear how K.T. Blackadder went on this whole diatribe to claim that you can get something from nothing, that is, antimatter, and matter through the process of a vacuum. He interestingly refers to the authorities when he himself can't explain how you get matter from nothingness. He then went on a flamingo diatribe that once nothingness is established, hence it means it can then be measured. This may be true to an extent of trying to measure the distance of emptiness, non-existence, but cannot be measured applying for a existing nothingness matter form, since nothingness has no form. For example, I can go into my room, open an empty drawer, test to see it's empty. It's basically nothing in there. So can I measure an empty space within the diameter of the surrounding walls? Yes, I can, because it has boundaries. However, the nothingness in the universe, for example, has no boundaries and walls. Hence, the nothingness cannot be measured, nor can it be measured in a nothingness form, since it does not exist. It sounds as ridiculous as asking someone to measure the water level depth of a river that doesn't exist. He then states that science is still working on the question about can something come from nothing, yet K.T. Blackadder and his Richard Dawkins seems to think that these questions are already answered. So why do they then contradict themselves by referring to authorities who they themselves claim there are still unanswered questions? Let's now refer to some of those same authorities, such as Lawrence Krauss and Stephen Hawkins, and you will see how bizarre they go in rejecting their own science standards. For instance, the Discovery Big Bang episode begins by telling us everything in the universe is made from matter, created in the first moments of the Big Bang. The program then asks, how did nothing become something? Professor Lawrence Krauss answers, the laws of physics allow it to happen. Then at that instant of creation, all the laws of physics began to take shape. Response: but how can the laws of physics do this when the laws are still taking shape? Furthermore, one of the most fundamental laws of physics is the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It amuses me when scientists atheists get stuck on the question, what came before or what brought this universe into existence? They go as far as to reject their own physics laws they themselves made up. Their physical laws claim energy cannot be created, yet we now have atheists going against this law and claiming matter, i.e. energy, can come from a vacuum made up of nothingness. Example, energy matter being created by nothing. So what we now have is physics, science, laws versus scientists. Not that I agree entirely with all science theory. I do believe energy can be created, since I do believe energy was created at the Big Bang by God. And science tells us that matter was created at the Big Bang point, since the universe is made up of time, space and matter, and since the universe did not always exist, hence means energy did not always exist. Hence there is only one way of getting something from nothing, and that is by an act of creation by a creator. In fact, by the Almighty Creator God. One occasionally hears the comment today that there is such a thing as matter being created out of quantum fluctuation, producing equal amounts of particles and antiparticles, so that 0 becomes +1 and -1. And this is often used to explain how the universe popped into existence. But this mechanism requires the pre-existence of laws of quantum physics, hardly nothing. Big Bang theory requires that originally all matter, energy, space and time were contained in a single point of infinite density, technically known as the singularity. In the program, Dr. Krauss informs us, all we know is that from what we have been nothing, we go to the state of almost infinite density, and infinite temperature and infinite violence. That is all the energy currently represented by the mass of some 200 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars, was contained in a single point. Response. However, there is nothing in the known world of physics to start the universe expanding from such a singularity. Physics descriptions of the Big Bang and the equations derived for the theory only apply after the unknown events has already happened. Cross follows atheist Stephen Hawkins makes the same blunder in his latest book called The Grand Design. Hawkins' key assertion is that the Big Bang followed inevitably from the laws of physics, so no need for a creator. Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Response. However, logic doesn't seem to be his strong point. Self-creation is self-contradictory. Something can do something, including create, only if it exists. Something not yet existing has no power to do anything, including creating itself. It also amazes me to the extent that these atheists criticize an imaginary fairy tale God that brought this universe into existence, when in fact it is they themselves who are now trying to make us believe you can get matter from nothingness, which is absolutely imaginary and nonsense, since you need something there to begin with. Things don't just appear out of nothing, unless you believe in supernatural magic, and I'm guessing atheists don't believe in the supernatural. One of the reasons why atheists are so stuck on the origin of the universe point is that they cannot prove that there was another existence prior to this universe, because they cannot go back beyond time, space and matter. If they could prove another existence, this will ultimately prove the non-existence of God for them, or to prove that matter always existed, but we know that matter was created from the point of the Big Bang, i.e. the start of the universe. This troubling question now is trying to lead them into false examinations based on no proof at a new approach to prove that something can come from nothingness. As bizarre as it sounds, it is true, to no avail, making themselves look like a laughing stock. Finally, K.T. Blackadder went on to say that this universe has no credibility, that a God made this universe. K.T. Blackadder, you actually shot yourself in the foot by saying you don't have all the answers, yet you are quick to rule God out as a credible source of a creator. Just typical on atheistic mentality. There is a possibility for everything, it seems, for atheists. Matter coming out of nothingness and alien life existing on other planets. But when it comes to God as a possibility, a big no-no. How typical from an atheistic standpoint. And what more evidence does K.T. Blackadder want? Creation is proof for a creator. Complexity in creation is further proof to a creator. The fact is, K.T. Blackadder, your atheist cannot create life. Your atheist scientists cannot give life even to a dead body, let alone create life, which actually proves that brainless Mother Nature was not responsible, but a higher power, intelligence, was responsible. And the fact that you can't create life with your intelligence is further proof in your face that Mother Nature was not responsible. If it was, then I challenge you to challenge Mother Nature and create something as simple as a fly, any living form. Just create it. You can't. And scientists are spending millions of dollars trying to do that. Yet they claim, oh, it was just a coincidence. Brainless Mother Nature that never went to school was responsible for complexity, for example, in the genome. This is ludicrous. The point is that there is a higher power, a higher creator, responsible for complex creation, and the fact that you and your scientists cannot create it is further proof that a higher power is responsible, which speaks volumes. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the rebuttals. Goodbye and good day.